is Mother's Day.
All right, we're on now.
Mother's Day is today, whatever date that is. If you want to date this interview, this video, we're going to do a quick review of the first 40 pages that it's taken us. How many? What? A quarter of the year to go through, or something like that.
9 sessions so far,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, times 3, 27 hours, 40 pages.
Right.
But a lot of good discussion. The discussion's important because it shows how everybody processes the information, which may help other people feel a little freer to use the material internally. Well, we started out with the extract from the Tibetan, that he's a Tibetan disciple. He's probably farther on the path, and he's incurred greater responsibilities because he's farther on the path. I guess that's why these books have occurred. He does consider that it's a certain amount of work, but it's not the only work he's doing. So he fits it in, and it was done over a stretch of from the early 20s to the last publication was 1950, but that would have had to been worked on a little bit earlier. But it was a stretch of time for the 20 books, or however number there totally is, to materialize. Like he said, he's a little farther on the path. He can see a little more, and he's incurred greater responsibilities. And one of them is this line of books. It's also said, because this spins off of the Theosophical Society. So you had Blavatsky, and this is said to be the psychological key to the secret doctrine. That's what this collection of books is meant to be. So you're going to see most of it deal with humanity and psychological development for humanity. So you've got your chart from Cosmic Fire with its 7 levels and its 7 sub-levels, which is called the 49 fires. Oftentimes referred to that way. As far as DK is concerned, you can either take this material or you can leave it. If you see it correct, true, and useful, yes. If it doesn't work for you, go somewhere else. Find something else that works for you. They don't claim this material to have been channeled. What the description, the way it's described, is it was just mental to mental. In other words, he's passing that information along. She's picking it up. And then it gets written down. And I think you can see from the beginning books to the ending books, he had made an inference that it got, the process got more perfected as time went on. And certainly the material became more complex, and the wording and the word patterns and everything were more sophisticated, but that's probably the result of the longevity of the amount of time they worked together, and it just became probably a lot clearer to hear what he was saying and actually getting it down accurately and probably faster. Also in terms of from head to hand to writing, and most of the time there would have been writing, or if it wasn't, they were having a typewriter, you had to hit the keys. Ding, 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 type of tapping. So anyway, they don't claim it to be it's not channeled by, you've got these books out there, the Seth books or the this or the that, but they lay no claim there. The one thing I see that in them is there's a lot of data, a lot of material there is an ancient pathway. There have been humans who have traveled it, been able to leave information, and I believe that these Tibetans probably have a collection of that information, and they have a collection to draw upon. You know, I would not necessarily say that the United States, as the United States, for example, has a collection like that of this kind of material to draw upon, because we haven't trod those paths yet, if you will, for the most part. We get a little version of it. You know, Christianity is. It's laying down a pathway. It's laying down data and information to be passed on. But for the most part, I would expect Tibet and people in that area have had access to a longer trail, because you also have China over in that area. Shambhala is said to be in the Gobi Desert in the etheric. So that's within their range of information and data also. So, any questions, Donnie? Because I'm seeing you look and look.
Just listening to you.
Yeah.
On an interesting note, today is what's called White Lotus Day. And it's the day that HPV died in 1891.
Okay.
So,
Were you
so
there?
that's, I mean, it's just a little tidbit.
Were you there?
Yeah, maybe. I don't
It could have been.
know.
That's why it comes to light.
So when you say that there's no like trail here, maybe Christianity, what about the natives and some of their belief systems or things that they've developed? No? Or even the Aborigine and
You're here. All I'm saying is, in this case with them in Tibet, they had quite a collection to draw from that's probably has had people still all the way through. I mean, it's a little different to me than that. I understand that that is there. Okay. I'll go out on a limb and say that I'm not sure that that led all the way up to Shambhala. All right. I think this is the only pathway I've seen out there that goes up on the mental plane and then the Buddhic, et cetera, et cetera.
okay.
You know, I have seen and I have heard some of the other pathways and so on and so forth, but I don't see them leading quite to where this leads. And part of that I will go with is most of that would have been during the Atlantean times, of which this country is said to by DK to be part of their landmass. Okay. And that was high development on the astral plane. Such a high development that they had to short circuit it.
Okay.
Okay, does that answer it? I mean, I understand there's that whole other trail. And when I was younger, Carlos Castaneda came out with the Yaqui Indians and that whole developmental range as a pathway. So I'm aware that that stuff is there, but I don't believe it leads to where this ultimately leads.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. If you haven't had development on the astral plane yet, then maybe that's the place to really get that in the process of their rituals, so on and so forth. But you know, time is a factor here, and the development of the human body is a factor. And the ability to function on these upper planes. I mean, when you look at the chart on 117 and you see that little line that's drawn that goes straight up, it's going up to the 4th level of the mental plane. That is where we have come to now. That is as far as we've gotten so far in humanity. And so what you would be indicating to me is that during Atlantis, they would have been to the same place. And I'm saying, I don't think so. I think that when he makes a remark about with each incarnation, when the soul comes back, it has a better piece of equipment, is because there's a continual development going up that way. But with each avatar, possibly, we can have them quicker now because we've got better equipment than you would have had before. So you may have one come with each age in changing, for example, the age of Pisces to the age of Aquarius. You had one that came with the last change, that was Christ, Jesus coming. But we have certainly come, I think our body, our capabilities have come a long way from the year 00 AD to today. I just don't see the people in Rome doing the quantum. I don't see them mentally developed to a point where we are as a collective now even. So if that makes any sense, that's why I'm seeing it differently, is because with each age, whoever comes with this age it's going to be mental. It's going to be on the mental plane, and it's going to be that development. So I guess I'm saying this trail, I think, is the longest, clearest trail we have right now. That's why I like this material. Again, you know, you can take it or leave it because you don't have to believe me at all. And I guess I don't understand why it's so important to go back and look at what somebody predicted 2,000 years ago when you're living in it right now. If that makes sense. Because we are living in the reality of what somebody predicted a couple thousand years ago. Okay. That's where they're searching. That's why they want all those tales. They want to know what's going on, but they're living it. Okay, so am I going to be impressed with that from 2,000 years ago, or am I going to be impressed with somebody who figures out where we are today and can work and function and try to do something effective in today's world? So, and I think this material is apropos for that. Anyway, enough of my ramblings here.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Carla, would that be a bit of a regression to kind of think in those terms as far as just looking back at what was predicted would be happening now?
Well, a couple of
Kind of
things.
dwelling in on that as opposed to just living it and kind of moving forward through it. Is that kind of what we're saying?
Well, yes and no, but the other thing is, like I said, Atlantis and this landmass, according to DK, and they're highly developed on the astral plane. So they're psychic. They can see those things. Okay. But I think we've talked a little bit about, and that's organic. In other words, A.A.B individual would have been more highly developed than another, so on and so forth, but you needed that individual right then and there. Okay, so it only has a range of what that individual can see, and that it can be passed outward, if you will. But in today's world, like, it's, you know, I use the concept of Einstein. He certainly went out there. He saw what it was, he brought it back, but we now live in a mental realm where we can convey it to everybody. We don't need Einstein anymore. Okay, he doesn't have to be alive to continue to be the seer in that regard. That's one thing, but there was another point that I wanted to make. I kind of lost it when you asked me that question. Oh, and when I ask about that with people who are very tuned into that, you know, and see, I see Christianity as having significance. I see somebody coming and demonstrating those first five initiations and showing how that's to be done as significant. I see that as an upgrade for humanity. And I think every avatar that comes lays the path forward. And now we've had 2,000 years to try to integrate at least the concept of those five initiations and the information about there is a heaven, if you will. I think that's the way they translated it. They didn't say, well, you need to go to the spiritual triad, okay? But they had heaven. There was somewhere up there. And that there was another future there, and it had meaning and information. So when I ask people who are following in the realm that you're talking about, Melinda, very heavily, and I say, well, where does Christ fit into this and this ideology? Well, no, we're pagan. In other words, this whole 2,000 years doesn't matter. That just happened, and whatever developmental level came with that, that's not factored in. They function in the realms that you talked about back in the Atlantean times, if you will. And DK says we have a lot of them who, you know, there was kind of a flood and a lot of them drowned. Evidently, they only talk about how Noah got saved, but they don't talk about everybody else. Just assume it, they didn't survive it. But they're back. They're being brought back in at this point in time. And so I'm not surprised there's a big movement to try to recapture all of that and let's go from there, kind of thing. They're more comfortable with that. They're not necessarily comfortable with the with Christianity or the principles of it, period. Where I think, and this is me guessing now, I'm guessing they are coming in at this point in time because this Christianity should be established enough, and that through a number of incarnations, those people will get on board with what's happening now, if you will. And they'll move on to the mental plane. I mean, you know, you had, as far as I understand, some high priestesses or you know, who are very good at being psychic, and they still are today. But the awareness level should be shifting to the mental plane, because there's a whole nother realm to develop up there. That is very different, with a whole new set of tools for humanity when they can connect. So. Yeah, and I think he indicates that we're on the mental plane developing that equipment. And basically what I do is I work with today's mind and the possible approach to your soul. Because if you look on that chart, we're only one subplane away. Okay. In other words, we've reached as far as subplane 4 on our lower mental mind. The soul is sitting on subplane 3. That is what building the anakarana is about. Is making that little leap from that straight line to that little teeny baby triangle. Yeah. And if you're going to be on that chart, then your Atlanteans are down in the astral plane, and they developed fully from all 7 levels of that astral plane. Okay. So they can have some very impressive psychic skills. Now, I've been around this material for a long time, and a lot of people talking about a lot of things. And there used to be an argument that, oh, well, you don't have to go up on the mental plane. You can just go from the astral right up to the Buddhic short circuit and not do the mental plane. And the consensus was from people who know more than I do, no, you cannot do that. The soul has to be part of this whole process, and the destruction of that soul, the causal body, because you don't need it anymore, has to occur. And you cannot do that without going up on the mental plane. You cannot bypass that. This is the design we're looking at of the, I'll say world for the sake of it. It's far more than this little world, but anyway, the realm that we're in, let's put it that way. This is the design, this is the pattern, this is the way we need to go to accomplish it and to get to the top. You can't skip any of the pieces. Does that make any sense, Melinda? Do we have an audio? Do we have audio? No, we don't.
Yes.
Oh, okay. You can hear me. Okay.
Okay, there you are.
Yeah. Anyway, I was saying, does that make any sense?
Yeah.
Why I don't pay as much attention to that whole group of and development earlier?
Yes.
Yeah. Because this is this is where the real work that humanity as a whole eventually you all have to pass this way. And so my focus is, okay, hey, look, here we are, let's get at it. And it's one thing that DK says in these books, and I have watched people work with these books for 40 years and just miss the fact that he put them out. Ultimately, he said, to end up with Raised Initiations, his last book, and he wonders, why aren't you people trying to pursue this path? You know, they enjoy the books and the material, they just somehow don't think it has anything to do with them. And I'm just kind of the reverse. I'm saying, hey, here it is. This is to be done, you know. Donnie, are you listening?
Of course.
Good, say something then, because we've had these discussions.
Well, I can't see how you could skip the soul, but maybe, my thought is maybe those people that were saying that were just more advanced than they thought or something at the time and weren't looking at it like that. I don't know. Because they were there, they just figured out you could just be there, but they're kind of just skipping over it.
Well, I think they were functioning from the astral plane and just saying, we don't need to bother with the mental plane.
Okay.
In other words, the 2-4-6 line, which is really the creation in a sense. In other words, 1 and 3 are spirit and matter. That's what's creating this system. But your water signs and so on and so forth are more connected with the 2-4-6 line, which is the astral, the Buddhic, and then up on number 2 up
Well,
there.
so DK says at some point that the 6th ray, people are, primarily dealing with 6th ray energy, have a lot of glamour to get rid of on the astral plane. And the most interesting part is that for 6th ray, who are, I guess, working through that, thought follows, or thought kicks in the actions, or the emotional side dominates for the most part and causes the responses. I don't remember exactly how he said it right now, but thought
Thoughts are
follows.
driven.
Yeah.
Thoughts are driven by emotions, I imagine is what he meant
Right.
early
Mhm.
on. And that's the common monastic. That's the transfer off the astral up to the mental. And right now it's a mixture on the bottom of the mental plane, and that's why they call it kama monastic. But that's going to get burned out before you hit that little soul, that little triangle. What happens is something comes along and you get a flash of something and it starts burning off that astral plane energy. It's not principled energy, neither one of those, the bottom 2. So that's the practice zone. That's where we learn how to, well, first of all, you started with dirt and you worked your way up to us and all the levels of plants, animals, insects, everything on the way up here and developed. But there is a point at which that shift over has to go to principled matter, and the principled matter starts on the mental plane. That's where 2 and 2 always equals 4, because 2 and 2 could equal 16 down on the astral plane. It wouldn't matter. Anything that you made and you created on the physical plane is ashes to ashes, dust to dust. In other words, that type of material just goes back and becomes material again. You can, the tree uses the ash and it grows again, and now you got wood. In other words, it just translates through all of that. But and that's why they talk about the first initiation, which gets you into understanding you're part of a group, and that there's meaning out there and value and all of those things that are above here. It gives you an idea. There's this whole chart up above, and that you are part of it. And of course, Christ talked a lot about that. So, and then the astral plane is next, and then you start practicing on emotions and developing them and figuring out how to work all that. Just like young children have to go through those developmental stages, mankind has to in this case. Mental plane is the first of what they call principled matters, where things actually really matter, and there's basic laws and things that function there that you do not work against and win. Okay. You come to understand how the system is designed and you start to work with it. That is considered third initiation, because they talked about the transition into the physical and the transition into the astral plane as first initiation, second initiation. But as far as the masters are concerned, the first initiation is number 3. Because then you've met the soul, and the soul is really the initiate. The soul determines it needs to incarnate because it needs to develop. That's why we're here. Is, the soul is the one that runs the show and is the initiate. And he says this many times in here. So we're really down there somewhere on the bottom. And I think you told me you thought you had a lot of 6th ray. So if you explain it to us, then we can believe it.
I was trying to find that passage, but
So anyway,
I found that to be true when I read it, though, that my thoughts led me into wherever I was going, and they did dominate. And so I definitely feel like that was a thing.
so are you talking about your thoughts, your emotional driven thoughts?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's some beauty to be offered on the astral plane of what's above to draw you. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful things can happen. And then the other thing is, on the astral plane, everything can be made to look beautiful until you deal with it for a while, and some of it's a shock because there's no necessary basis in truth, and people end up hurting a lot, getting a lot of emotional hurt out of it. But it's also that which lifts you up, and the emotion that is the key is desire, because that pulls you up onto the mental plane, because it's being pulled by that little divine spark that's in the center of all of that energy, whether it's physical, whether it's astral, whether it's mental. It's all pulling you back up to the source. So it's its own magnetism. So you're looking for the good, the beautiful, and the true, as DK indicates. But you got a lot of energy to slog through down on the bottom before you can start to see the pathway, if you will. I have notes about skipping rules. Ancient writings are full of symbols that need ancient history to unpack them. And we are now with the mental plane equipment. And so, but there's plenty, I have notes, plenty, others are out there, and they're doing whatever resonates with them. Let's put it that way. But I believe DK's material is heading to the cutting edge of the way we are equipped in the now, 2022, and how to get the most. Pardon? Oh, and his material helps us understand how to get the most out of the mileage psychologically, that we now have the equipment to work with to drive us up that chart. Each of those levels of, as you move up there, have different qualities to the energy that functions on those levels, on the subplanes, and so on and so forth. Once you get up to that soul, that third initiation, I mean, because when you get done with that, you've made contact with every permanent atom in the triad, just a contact. You've built a little anakarana that to get you to the soul, but then you build one to make that point. And now you start dealing with energies that function very differently than the ones you've been working with all your life. That are the ones that are normal for us, but not necessarily do we really like it, because some of that energy is really a drag. You know, drags you down, doesn't let you rise up. You're in heavy duty materialism because you're working with substance. Your body is made of it. You know, you have rules and regulations. Some of those rules and regulations change as you move upward. So it's not that somehow you're going to go upward and you're just going to be the same person, functioning the same way, because it doesn't work that way. All right, so you're deep in thought again, Donnie, and I'm looking at you.
I'm looking at you.
I mean, haven't you did some stuff with the Rosicrucians
Yeah,
a couple of years ago, and when you came back, I I think it there for a while you were on a pretty nice high.
yeah, for sure. It's filled with love. Pouring
Yeah.
out. Yeah, it's amazing.
And it makes the world look quite differently when you're in those stages, and you act differently when you're in those stages.
Right. Yeah. We get to witness the whole thing and the transitions from one to the next. I guess it feel, you know, without this material, it would certainly make you feel kind of crazy, you know, because of the grounding of it, I guess, and the process of grounding it, and then kind of starting over again and seeing the new cycle for the first time and seeing the cycles for the first time, and then watching it from that, you know, a little bit from the outside in, and then, you know, working on the issues that we have that are still left over become real obvious, I think, at some point. Like, okay, well, these are the issues that I have left that I recognize I need to deal with. And then focusing a lot of the energy to get rid of those issues. And then the next thing you know, they're gone before you even realize it, in a sense, I want to say. They start to just fade away. And then you realize that, okay, well, maybe that's kind of gone, that issue. And then you on to the next issue to work through. And then it just keeps going, I guess, and gets quiet after you kind of get through some of them.
And then it starts all over again.
And it starts again, apparently. Then you feel like it's day one again. So
Yeah.
with each time you are letting go of one thing, the next thing pops up to be let go of. And then at each stage of that, I imagine it does look different from the outside.
Yeah,
You
but you also feel different, I think, on the inside,
Oh, for sure.
you know. And there's different levels of energy depending upon where you are in that chart. And there's fire by friction, there's electric fire, and there's solar fire. It's fire by friction, solar fire, electric fire. And those are like the difference between a what used to be a real muscle car. Now they make a car and they put a muscle car sound in the back of the back of the car, and when the car runs, that audio runs in the back of the car, sounds like a muscle car, but the engine's not doing that anymore. Okay, but the old muscle car, you know, that was a real heavy duty grind. That was a fire by friction engine, and so on and so forth. And that's your first stage, you know, and then I suppose the hybrid we could use as the solar fire now in terms of that stage. And you could use the Tesla for the electric fire if you wanted something. I'm sure it's a very poor choice, but it gets the idea, the way the energy runs. And so consequently, the experience in the cars is different when you're riding in them. Well, when you shifted from one level to the other of that energy up that chart, that's what's operating, and that's how you're operating on the inside. So where you start out with the fire in friction, and you have all of this, you know, I got to do this and I got to do that, and every level my emotions are churning and my physical is pushing as hard as it can to do this and that. And mental's probably half not even there at that point in time, because you're too busy negotiating all of this other heavier duty dynamics. That's fire by friction. That's down on the very lower levels, and that's the way you're operating. And as you shift up, it would be like shifting to the different, the way the different cars operate. You know, pretty soon you're humming along. Okay, nice little hum there. And that energy is not grinding anymore, and you never have quite as much stress. You're not as plugged into that whole emotional realm, because you're now moving on to different planes. And then when you get higher up, the way they describe it, for example, that you're going to end up with bliss. Well, when you end up with bliss, I mean, you're bliss because you're back to being one, not a duality of any sort, which it used to be a goal. When I first got introduced to this in the 60s, you know, the ultimate was you just get to nirvana and then you kind of sit there and park. You know, you're always going to be in nirvana after that. Well, that ain't, then you're not going to do anything down here. You know, you are parked on the top of some hill or mountaintop with your legs crossed, you know, and those were the images we used to get from the East is, and I suppose Harrison's Fool on the Hill was describing that in a sense, except that it really, I mean, that occurs and you do have that bliss, and it's the objective, I think, of a lot of people who initially pursue this path. But, and it's great to experience, to know it exists, but why would one, if they're down here, want to be in that realm all the time? Because they're not going to be doing anything, you know, and you're here to do something, or you're already up there and you're on your way out the door to go somewhere else. Is if you follow all of the rays and initiations, the last two, which is 8 and 9, are prepping you for being jettisoned somewhere else. You know, you've already chose your path, and whatever the stages are, he can't even describe them. He says, you know, he knows they exist, but it's way beyond his realm, certainly way beyond mine. But that basically you've chosen your path at number 7, at number 6, you're still getting more informational learning on number 7, so that you could even get out of here to be coalesced enough to pack up all of who you are, if you will, and get it in some manner that you could transport the whole of you out in. And then there's 8 and there's 9, and you can't go out except when there's evidently certain cosmic alignments that allow that, but you're gone. So I mean, when you said earlier it's a never ending, it is never ending, and you're always back at the bottom. It operates in sets of 3, the initiations, 1, 2, 3, which in this case is 7, 6, and 5. Then it's 4, 3, and 2, 3 and 6 are completions of 2 cycles. And then the last cycle, which goes to 9. So they have some basic principles that operate similarly between them. But the point is, when you're done here, you are then truly at the bottom in, because that little chart you've got has, that is just the cosmic physical plane. So there's 6 more like it above it. The next one is the cosmic astral plane, of which it has 7 levels. Then there's the cosmic mental plane. Then there's the cosmic Buddhic, and on and on. So, and if you're really good at this, I guess, and you can zip through these, I mean, you would be just going up, 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 but it won't matter. The point is you're still always at the bottom of something, because there's a whole lot more at the top above you to go. So early on, you've still got a soul, and which means you've got an ego. And whenever you accomplish something like this, you know, your chest goes out and you're really happy, huff and puff, and I accomplished this. That's the ego. And probably it's the soul slapping you on the back saying, good guy, good, you know. So you get real happy and you're excited and you've accomplished something, and you can kind of, I don't want to say lord it over other people. You might be a little cooler than that, but still, by the same token, you're very pleased with yourself. Well, that's because of your ego. And your ego is the soul. He uses it here. And the soul is the initiate. So he's just prodding you on, you know, to keep going, slogging up the hill. But the point is, and the farther up you get, the more humble you get, because you have totally different recognitions of what's really going on. At this point down here, it's all me, 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 you know, for everybody. They're totally focused in, this is me, and this is physically me, and oh, it's all real, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, so you get more serious, you know, you get more humble, and probably at some point then you realize the you that's been perceiving all this isn't even in the equation. You know, yeah, the essence of who you are is in the equation. You're just this little form here. And as long as you can function like our mental functions, we think it's us. But that's okay. I mean, it's all part of the journey, and the shifts and the focuses come. So, when I get to his introduction, by the way, that was just going through his little,
I know we did an hour already, almost.
I know. Well, yeah, let me know if you want to speed this up, because I can wander on with on and
Melinda
on.
said she has to go at soon.
You got to mute on.
Yeah, but I mean, this is really interesting. Carla, you can keep talking because I'm happy.
Right.
Like,
Okay.
I don't know. And
I'm-
yeah, or we can move on. It doesn't matter. But I like this part. As I've been growing up, I think as it just reminds me of, like, as I've been growing up, there's been so many times where, like, you know, you talk about the bodies, like you feel heavy. Like I felt so many times where, like, I like almost suffocate. Like I felt like I was not because I was having a panic attack, but I felt like my body was just not big enough for whatever's stuffed inside of it. Does that make sense? I don't know how to explain it. Like I would be like it felt uncomfortable. Like I don't know how to explain it. Like it's just not big
I
enough.
said that to Carla yesterday, Melinda.
You know what I'm saying? Like you just,
Yeah.
and you're not having, it's not a panic attack. You're not having anxiety. You're just, your body, you're like, and then you try to stretch, like to try to make more room. And it's like, okay, there's just not enough freaking room in here. Like I need to get out of this body.
I know Thomas said he felt like he was going to explode at points.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talked about that last week, Donnie.
Yeah,
My head felt like it was going to explode, and you made the comment, maybe it will.
Yeah, right? Maybe we'll just
That'd be
But no,
cool,
Melinda-
fireworks all over the walls. or something.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you're talking about, Melinda. Sometimes you're just taking in a lot and you feel very, very heavy. And then you get to a point where you transmute it all, and then you're just empty. And you're ready,
then you're like,
ready for the
oh,
next, right?
Yeah.
And then it fills
Yeah.
up again. And this is kind of what we're talking about. It's just like you're filling up, you're emptying out, and you're moving forward.
yeah. It'll wake me up in the middle of the night. Like I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'm
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh my God, my body is not, it's not enough room. There's not enough room.
Oh, it's the
And then-
season. Tis the season.
Yeah.
It's so funny that we're talking about this. Yeah.
Go
It's great.
ahead.
No, I actually had something, and then it dropped right away. So
Yeah,
no,
but
that's
it
great.
woke you
Instant
up in the
transmutation.
night, right?
Yeah, that's interesting because we all kind of had that. We all kind of experienced the same thing like that.
Well, the
I
interesting-
equate it to like being drunk and then kind of getting a little more sober.
Like right away.
Yeah, like it's kind of it's more sobering every time that something falls away, I guess. Or
well, but
something new comes, or however you wanna explain that.
yeah, in your case, Donnie, though, he had a transit scheduled. I mean, this is the funny part because he's waiting all day for this transit, trying to recognize what's coming. So now you pick up the rest of it, Donnie.
No, I just woke up at 3 a.m. and then got sober for a minute. I guess I don't know how to even explain it anymore. I actually talked about it last week in the astrology one, which I need to go back and listen to what I said. But since then, I just feel like I'm becoming more sober a little bit more every day. I don't know how to what to say there. I don't know how to explain that. And it's an interesting thing.
Mhm.
It's very interesting.
Oh. Yeah, it's weird. It's interesting and real weird. All at the same time. I'm just like, all right.
I was trying to figure out, I think, over the last while since that happened, if it was going to be a permanent thing. And well, I actually didn't think about it being permanent or a permanent change or shift or whatever you want to call it. But then I realized it. I was like, oh crap, this is probably permanent. And that's going to be something to get used to. So.
Yeah, if that be the case, yes, but you will get used to it. That's the thing, and you won't even remember the other pretty soon because you can't bring it back. In other words, when you've made a transition, you're not going back to the old you. Because that old you's not even there anymore.
Well, I keep waiting. I wanted to say that I thought, and I don't know if this is something that we put out on the internet or not. I don't know. There's something to that. That's fine. I don't have any issues with that. But I guess I kept kind of waiting to see like, oh, well, maybe the chit chat in my brain is going to come back, or maybe I'm going to want to go. No, I'm going, oh, that's not coming back, I guess. And it just kind of hit me that something's slightly different now, a little bit. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I think you had it described right in the transit prior to it. So the
Well,
interesting thing is,
Yeah, I mean, that's wild that you wrote that, Carla. You said you had said any valid beliefs should any valid beliefs will survive this transit without difficulty. And it's like, oh, okay, well, the key there is what was valid before it. And then what it, so I'm going, oh my gosh.
Your head's gonna explode.
Yeah, I'm going, Carla, how much was valid? So that's the key. That was what I saw on that. I'm going, oh my gosh. Yep. All right. Interesting one there.
Yeah, but you know, some people believe that you can kind of make whatever is written down or something happen if you know it. And so they feel vulnerable to astrology and transits because they think, oh, well, I can just imagine it. Could you have imagined what happened? Could you have made, first of all, imagined what happened to you, and secondly, made it happen?
No, nobody could. I don't think, and you've always said from the beginning that the wonders never cease, and you don't know what you don't know, and you can't know what you don't know. And then over the last year, I've had lots of little things happen, and I said, oh, I never saw it coming like that. There's no way. And it's just not anything that you could ever freaking imagine in your wildest. Even little things that have come, you know, that have happened, like, oh, geez, that is not at all what I had thought would ever be the case. So, yeah, no, it's impossible. Well, and then there's that blockage there, I think, because it's impossible to imagine it. So the people just would have to say, you have to make an excuse of some sort until you've experienced the fact that there's no way to ever imagine it.
Yeah, because it's just not in you. And if it's not in you prior to this, it's not there. You know, it's an external event that comes. More data, a contact that brings this, and then it's part of you, and then you get to process it. But prior to that, you can't imagine what you don't know.
Not even possible.
So anyway, with these books, now that I got to the word introduction here in my review, these books are looking for truth. That's really what this material is about, and it's what we meet for, is and figuring out where it is available, and the ability to stay on focus as you pursue is part of what his introductory remarks made. But basically that's it. The truth is the only thing that is going to hold together. In other words, if you build a scaffolding, if you build an idea, if you don't have basic truth, you don't build relationships that last. You don't build, if 1 and 1 equals 3, and that's the math you use, anytime you build a structure, it's not going to hold. You know, in other words, there always has to be truth. If you've got the truth, then you've got a foundation. If you're just imagining, oh, this would be a good idea. So it's like my littlest grandson. He was a couple years old, and he's got a lot of Pisces. He's got 12th house sun, and he's got a moon in Pisces. And he just says to me, well, Grandma, I just tell people what they want to hear, and then they're happy and they do what I want them to do. You know, and then I had to explain, well, we can't do it that way, you know. But that was his line of the easiest way to negotiate here on this planet is just tell him what. And he was really cute, and he's had no problem talking to people. He, you know, at 2 years old, he'll go up and just give you a whole story about that fish over there because he knows, you know, and he's been catching fish, and he really has, even at 2. So, but he just says, yeah, I just tell them what they want to hear, and then they do what I want, kind of thing. So if you do that, nothing is going to hold, because it's not necessarily a basis in truth. If whatever you're doing fits that design, literally, and in far more minute detail than that chart, and you work your way up there, it's going to hold, and it's real, because that is the truth, the way things are put together. And so if you work with the architecture, and in this case, you work with your own chart, because those transits have been given to you along with the chart to succeed in this incarnation for the purposes of that soul. And if that soul is still up there as a little taskmaster, you know, when you get to esoteric healing, they'll indicate if the soul senses you're way off path of whatever this purpose of this incarnation is, they're going to send down a little irritant somewhere in the etheric, and you are not going to be happy. And if you aren't listening, it will turn into a physical problem. Okay. And enough of a physical problem, whatever the levels required, to get you off of the course you're going on and hopefully get you back on track. So, so the closer you can work to your purpose and your plan for this lifetime, the happier camper you're going to be here.
I want to say those things that get sent become pretty obvious too at some point.
Oh, they do, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know, I'll say this for you know, I struggled with some things, and you kind of wondering when is that going to go away, or when take this aspect of my personality from me. This is not beneficial anymore, or you know, just, you know, why do these things keep coming up, or when is this going to go away? Is it ever going to go away? And then surprisingly enough, apparently it does, gradually. And then that's an amazing thing. And I think there's probably some motivation in that. And that's the only reason I say it, because I think a lot of people wondering, why do I like this? Why do I want this? Or why do I feel that way? And I'm reading these books and it says I shouldn't think those things, or I shouldn't want to do these things. But it's all ends up being beneficial. You know, the duality of it is beneficial. And it comes back even after sometimes, until it apparently it just kind of drops off, it seems, I guess. So
Yeah.
I feel like there's motivation in that. Like there's nothing wrong here. We're just working through it, and then it will in fact dissipate.
Yeah. Oh, we got the other one. There they are.
My new best friends.
Mm.
Hi, Uncle Tom.
Hello. I miss you guys.
We're on video. We're on the internet, just so everybody knows.
Oh, hey, my other new best friend. For Melinda's sake, we just spent a week in the Outer Banks together, so
Nice.
caught lots of fish.
Yeah, there probably were lots of fish, weren't there?
Oh yeah.
Doesn't mean there are anymore.
No, people were still catching them when we left, so.
Good.
No, but going back to Donnie's thing, so Donnie has some of that kind of like why me aspect, right? Like why me, why now, what's going on type of thing. And then when you come to the realization of it, it's like it's just exactly what I needed at that point in time to process whatever it is. And I think too many people kind of get stuck there and dwell on that why me aspect, and they never are able to move past that. So I think it's good that we're talking about that, because that's, for me, I think that's a critical lesson to put out there, is just that, you know, you have these things happen to you, however horrible they might be, or however good they might be, but you can't really sit there and dwell on the why me, or why is this happening? You just kind of got to accept it and deal with it, and then move on, move past it. And then like you said, wait for the next thing.
Yeah, it doesn't give up here, does it?
Never
Just keep-
ends.
Yeah, this planet's actually wound pretty tight. It's got its cycles and its thises and its that's, and everybody on it is got their own little piece of it to work out.
We're on little neuroses.
Well, we could call it that,
Yeah.
but, or we could call it just, this is, this is, first of all, like I said, we are planetary issue. We are part of this planet, and our growth and development is a portion of this planet. It's not just the trees and not just the water, etc., but humanity itself is an active part of the growth and development of this planet for the purposes of the planet, not for our personal purposes
Right. Yeah, we
above and
both-
beyond everything else.
Right. We belong to it. It does not
Yeah.
belong to us, right?
Right. Yeah. And he does say somewhere the end all for humanity in this journey is to become a fully conscious unit in this. He may not say cellular structure, but I'm going to say that for definition, and a fully conscious unit in this planet. So in the structure of this planet. And we happen to be in the nature of organic things, at this point in time, certainly in the lower 3 levels, we're at the top of that developmental pattern, in as much as we are creating consciousness. And I'll say it again, we are conscious creating machines. Walker explains exactly how we do it through our nervous system. The way this body is designed, it's exactly what it does. And that's why it's so important not to mess around with your physical body in terms of putting a lot of other things in it or it becomes dysfunctional in regards to its purpose, and the true purpose it's here for. So I did have a note that as I kind of put this together, that no one owns the concept of the soul, of spirituality, of God. There's no one religion, no group that holds title to any aspects of that. I mean, this planet's been around for a long time. It goes through cycles, ray structures come in and out, other patterns of energy come in and out and weave themselves through all of our history. I mean, that's how we look at civilizations and analyze them. I don't know if we know what drives them, but we do look at different civilizations, and they're different and they have different qualities, and all of that is happening on this planet. But nobody owns it as far as from any human consciousness level. Each age comes, each cycle comes, incarnations come, they are appropriate to whatever those grander cycles are. We populate with that energy and then work with that energy to integrate that into this planet through the consciousness that gets created, if you will. So you basically determine for yourself what represents truth to you, and it's that cycle. So, and I have a note, the theme of this book is the magic of the soul. He talks about that in here. And the theme is, in what way can we best live the life of spiritual man in your own time and your own state of being and your environment? And no one can tell you that, how, why, or when to really do anything. Those are your choices. And different people will see different meaning in material because we're all different. And so understanding that, then we can make a lot more room on this planet. This planet gets roomier when, that's R-O-O-M-I-E-R, Donnie. Okay, not R-U-M-I. This planet gets a lot roomier when you have made room for all the people to be on it. Okay. That's how your world gets larger, is when you come to understand everybody's different and they all have a right to be here. And so, but it seems like the magic of this material, because it does have its own magic, I believe, the way it's written and the way it comes out, has had a lot of good effect for the people who've even been on these videos for the last, what is it, 2-3 months, something like that. Yeah. The material, if it gets built into the consciousness, then it'll go and it'll do what it's meant to do. You know, it rearranges the furniture in there, in a sense, is kind of the way I describe it, is there's that part that's waiting for that information. And once it gets it, then, okay, well, now we can do this, this, and this, and things kind of get moved around and things function generally better. I don't think they're, of all the people that I know who've been exposed to this, because people will contact me, what's happened to you now? All of a sudden I can see something that I couldn't see before, that I would have had to have a psychologist tell me or something like that. You know, how come I'm now aware? And I said, I don't know, just keep watching the videos. You know, just, and or listening to them. They do audible. Doesn't matter, but this material is its own invocation in respect to the terms that he talks about, invocation, evocation. And he says that will be the new science for the Aquarian age, is you set in this information, it's going to evoke the response that's going, and then the union of those two is probably what rearranges the furniture, so to speak. And then opens pathways and makes stuff possible that wasn't possible before.
My consciousness always gets elevated sitting and listening to this every time, whether it's on video or live and talking with everybody. It just, it does change things in real time for me. I personally, I get very empty listening and just absorbing this stuff. That's why it's hard to even come up with the right words when you ask something, because I'm so empty that I have to think for a minute, and it's just amazing. It is amazing.
It must make life a lot easier for Kim.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say. Maybe that's why things have been so great lately, right?
Could be, I don't know.
Could be. Yeah. Yeah.
I guess the other thing that I had, and just in terms of kind of looking at the first few chapters, is with this material, his focus is human development and unfoldment of energy or life, consciousness or the value of consciousness, working your way to your soul, and then talking about the incarnations of the soul. So working up the chart using the life force and our nervous systems and our body mass. That's really what he talks about, is the three things you have in this piece of physical equipment that are important, is using the life force, the nervous system, and the body mass. And that's what you create the consciousness with, and the body mass holds you all together and runs you around. You know? And then the explanations of the life principle and the soul and how we all interact, and then talks a little bit about the astrology and its place in the here and now. And that's about as far as we've gotten, and that's not much further than the introduction in this book for all of that period of time. But that's a little bit of a recap of where we've gotten. Not that it's a very concise one, it's just an overview. But those videos probably kind of randomly do seem out there sometimes, especially for people who are just plugging into them. Although I'm not sure you guys could recap what we just went through either, because it's been so wandering.
The dynamic of this is interesting, because this hasn't really been done before too much in the past. I mean, we read books, but we're listening and talking through this material and reading this material all at the same time. And you create this atmosphere where we concentrate on the words. And so the hearing really kicks in and the focus kicks in. So it would be interesting to talk about the power of these videos sometime, talking about, what's available now. This is what we're doing now. This is what's happening now. And it's a combination of things taking place. So I think we can all sense the power behind it. The further and the longer we do this, I think the more power there is in it too, somehow. The dynamics are off the charts,
Yeah, I mean, maybe the other two of you could talk to how it impacts you.
Well, I was just gonna say that it kind of piggybacking off the dynamic that Donnie was talking about. I've seen some other things out there where they talk about some of this stuff, but it's really kind of more, for lack of a better term, like one-sided. We're here, we kind of all have an open discussion around it, and it has a little bit of a different meaning for each of us, or maybe not different meaning, but yeah, I feel empty, so it's hard for me to describe too, but it's like, we talk about this openly, and we're kind of seeing how it impacts us, and we're applying it in our own individual lives, and we kind of talk about it through that aspect, because we have that type of open discussion when we're talking about this stuff too. And we relate it to a lot of real world examples and a lot of real world issues that are going on, whereas it's just not a just straight educate the masses type of thing straight from the book. We go straight from the book, but it seems like we try to apply it so that we can use it, which I feel like is the true intention of why the material is actually out there. And what I can say, so where Donnie says he feels empty and his level of consciousness kind of peaks a little bit when we're going back and listening to this or having these sessions, my head kind of buzzes. And I don't know if that's the same type of feeling you have, Donnie, but like I get the tingles, and it doesn't stop, and it might go on for days. So.
Yeah.
Melinda?
I guess, I don't know. I guess it like just validates a lot of stuff for me. Like when we're talking and I'm like, oh yeah, yeah.
Definitely.
Exactly. you know, and then it just makes it easier for me to be the weirdo that I am. So I'm like, not that I have a hard time with that anyway, but I'm just like, all right, yeah, perfect. Like, it's, you know, and then like, yeah, it just honestly, it just validates like a lot of stuff for me, you know, that either I had been thinking when I was younger or that I'm going through now. It just makes it easier. Yeah, everything's just a little bit easier. Or if I start getting frustrated, I'm like, oh, okay, like, you know, or certain things where I'm like, it's not even real. It's not even real. Why? I'm not even gonna worry about that, you know? So yeah, I think it's just like, it just, yeah, validates and then makes everything easier. Like, especially when you hit those, like if you're not like, like what Donnie was saying about, like you get those messages where it's like, hey man, this, you're not supposed to be doing that, you're supposed to be doing this. And you're getting those messages and you're like, wait, why is this happening? Why am I not feeling well? Or why is this happening? And then you're like, oh, because I'm not doing what I'm supposed to be doing, or I'm not like, you know, focused on that, like that right thing. And then it helps you like, whoop. But yeah, all of this, like hanging out with you guys and having these conversations just makes it easier, you know. And then, but yeah, of course you're like not feeling like, is this real? Am I right? Am I thinking the right things? Am I doing the right, you know? Because for me, like before I started hanging out with you guys, I was like, okay, I'm just like totally weird and on my own. And I have all these like ideas and thoughts about my path, I guess, or like how I'm supposed to be leveling up, I guess, as you would say. Like, you know, a lot of people like, I'm Christian, I'm Catholic, I'm this, I'm that. And I'm like, I'm not any of that stuff. I'm not pagan. I'm like this weird anomaly that just functions. But I've been taking from all that. Like earlier when Carla was talking about how pagans aren't like, they don't believe in Jesus. I'm like, there are actually a lot of pagans that do believe in Jesus. And so they follow these two paths together. And so I was like, okay. And that's how I feel. I'm just like, I'm that person that's like, okay, I'm not all of this or all of that or all of this. Like I've looked at all of those things and I'm like, that's it. That's good. That's valid. People should be doing that. Like, and you have people that are in those religions or those belief systems and they claim to like be doing all that stuff, but it's all garbage. They're not, you know, they don't actually believe or do or live or embrace any of those ideas. You know, they just say that they're doing that because they're scared. They're scared they're going to go to hell. They're scared something bad's going to happen to them instead of, you know what I'm saying? Like, so they just say they're doing it, but they don't believe it or actually live it or like understand it or feel it. So yeah, again, like hang out with you guys and having these conversations. And even if everything like that we talk about doesn't line up fully for me, or like maybe I even disagree a little bit here and there, I'm like, that's okay, you know. So, and I love that. Like for me, it's awesome. This is almost like, you know, like people are like, what do you do on Sunday morning? I'm like, well, like you go to church and I go and hang out with these guys and we have some like real spiritual shit going on. So that's what we're doing. Okay, it's what I'm doing. Like, yeah. So
Right. Yeah.
that's how it affects me.
You probably find we're really not the weirdos at all here, right? This
No.
is just,
No.
we're
that's the thing,
perfectly
like,
normal people.
Yeah,
just
no, and that's the
on a
thing. Like
different path.
everybody's a weirdo, and so everybody's normal because everybody's a weirdo. Like people that don't think they're weird, I'm like, oh, you're a freak, huh? Like you don't think you're weird? Oh, you got some weird stuff going. I want to know. Like people that think they're normal are the most interesting to me because I'm like, wow, you must have some really interesting things going on in there.
Or something. Yeah.
Because you think you're normal. I'm like, oh, well, I want to know. I want to know. Yeah. Yeah. People who think they're like the most normal or they're like, oh no. People who put their weird out there, like you, okay, like you got your thing, but people that are like, oh no, I'm normal, all right. this and that. I'm like, oh, you're hiding things, or you're not accepting things, or there's things you're doing where you're like, I don't want anybody to know about, and it's freaky, it's weird. I like it. I want to know. Yeah. That's how I'm like, everybody, like people that think I'm weird, I'm like, oh, it's because you don't realize how weird you are. Because we're all weird. That means we're all normal. We're all the same. But okay. That's why I like saying weird, because I'm like, everybody's weird. So, you
We're all
know,
the same with unique characteristics.
Yeah.
I think that's the best way to put it.
yeah. We're same, but different.
Exactly.
There's no two charts that are the same.
Right.
Yeah,
But we all have a chart.
that's right. So we should, I mean, life gets a lot larger when you can make room for everybody. You know, and then life gets easier because there is room for everything. Yeah. You don't have to reject anything. And you don't have to block it off and not let it in, so to speak.
Yeah.
All right, are we doing the video? Are we
Yeah.
calling it here in a few?
Yeah, whatever you want.
Just let me know. Are we stopping the recording?
I think
Well,
my
you
brain.
guys can keep, I'm gonna have to get going here in a minute.
Yeah.
I think we're probably all gonna have to go.
Yeah. My brain's
do.
pretty full right now. I'm not gonna lie. So I'm good. I've got some really nice juicy things swirling around, and
All right. Well, let me go ahead and stop the recording.